intermission time. It's great to get out to the movies.
So I had read that you lived and worked in San Francisco. Is that right? So I moved to LA this year from San Francisco.
All right.
And so I wanted to talk to you about it because San Francisco gets a bad rap, especially now, for being kind of a creatively dead city. I think I described it as a nocturnal city for the artists, essentially. And so I wanted to hear about your experience living and working there. And did you feel like you were surrounded by people with a creative spirit? And is there hope for a city like San Francisco in relation to places like New York, LA?
Creative centers are like a curious thing, like how to build them, make them thrive. And San Francisco is even more curious because it's this triangle or even a star, right? Because you have San Francisco, you have Oakland, you have Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
you have Marin, Mill Valley, and all have very different flavors, but they're in close proximity to each other. And that's really unique. I wanted to go to San Francisco because I felt like the mix of a history, a very creative cultural history, a mix of populations and income levels and all that, and ultimately the wealth and innovative spirit that came out of the tech world could really spark something. And in some ways, I have a second city, fighter attitude. Like, yeah, tell me I can't do something and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to get it done. Never got to be number one, so I like to fight to get see. At least I can get close enough to see the stage, hopefully. And so San Francisco worked well to kind of bring me in. It was also like a great, I often say it's the golden gateway to Los Angeles for me as a New Yorker. Living in San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
proper, being able to get around, you didn't really need a car,
Mm-mm.
and you got to the West Coast, it made it a little easier to come to Los Angeles for me. But I think what I didn't anticipate and what San Francisco is plagued with is for all those different things, they're worlds apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like people in Oakland don't go to San
Yeah.
Francisco. People in Berkeley don't go to San Francisco. San Francisco does. Maybe they go a little bit. When I was there last, I saw one of my really good friends who's, I think by their own admission, like straight as an arrow, Mr. Conformity. And I saw another friend, Boots Riley, who is the opposite, of that. Like I could spot Boots when we went to the place because he was the one wearing the 4-foot high hat, and like, whoa. And the place where those two folks, both who are really creative, and would never overlap, are right there in the same city is really interesting to me. It's also beautiful. And
Stunning.
everything is so accessible from there. I think it's like the disparity, of wealth is such a real challenge there. And then like people have a like will never be like that city attitude as opposed to like let's celebrate exactly what we are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I still I still have my heart's in a good. I think about it often. I did a writing retreat recently to go off to San Francisco and just be able to stare at the city and get my work done. It was nice.
Yeah, it's an incredible city. I absolutely love it. I'll advocate for San Francisco forever. Do you have, other than the projects you're currently working on that you can't obviously indulge us with what they're about, do you have any stories that you're hoping to still tell, specific themes that you haven't been able to work on in past projects?
Yeah, I was thinking like I think we're at a place where there's tremendous opportunity and great receptivity to different modes of expression and perspectives. Uh, so often, like what I end up desiring is the opposite of what I'm doing. So I enter something because I didn't get to do it when I was doing the other thing, and I work on it, and then I start longing for the other thing that I'm not doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that's been a consistent thing. And what's nice is it lets my slate kind of go back and forth between things. So I I have like, essentially right now like three different, let's call them buckets of type of work, stuff that is in like the 30 to 40 million dollar range, and stuff that is in the 10 to 15 million dollar range. But what I really want is that third bucket right now of under $3 million.
Mm.
I'd like to be able to do a bunch of more inexpensive movies, um, from a variety of type of directors. Right now, I'd like to do a bunch of movies focused on what I would say like mad love, right? Highly romantic movies that have something inexplicable in them. And you see that, uh, you know, crazy love feeling where somebody is caught up in what they're doing at the expense of everything else. And I think it'd be really interesting to see, say, like 10 filmmakers tackle that theme and do it on a real economy of scale from across the globe.
Mm.
Folks doing it all over different places. Um, I would like to see where that comes, how it comes together. Years ago, I raised money for a slate of films that was called Uncensored. And the idea was auteur directors doing movies about sex. And we would greenlight it based on a one-page treatment, and you got $1 million. And the only thing you had to do was get an NC-17 rating. The directors were going to be at that time Lynn Ramsey, Gaspar Noé,
Mm.
Tsai Ming Long, Hal Hartley, and Alfonso Cuarón. A lot of those movies actually ended up getting made. Not Lynn Ramsey's and Gaspar Noé, both who were going to make the same movie. They were both going to do George Bataille's Story of the Eye, if you know what that book is. It's 1920s existential pornography, just like shocking to this day to read a 100-page book, like blow your mind. And I've seen people reading it on the subway, which I was like, oh
You
my
have to
God,
take a photo.
it's like, holy cow. But like, actually, the thing that was kind of funny about that, we raised the money, and then the money, and we got the directors, and everyone was committed. And then the money said, oh, because so much was home video at that time, I need the directors to make an R-rated home videos for the math to work. And Gaspar said to me, to do the story of the movie is also like essentially some teenagers, um, force a priest into the most sinful series of
Oh,
acts
okay.
possible. So a lot of it is about like blasphemy of the church. And Gaspar said, to make the Story of an Eye R-rated would be blasphemy to art. I can't do it. And everything kind of fell apart. It was when Tsai Ming Long started to then make these, sexually absurd movies. And Alfonso Cuarón, when he came in, I told him the idea, and he was like, "Oh, this is really interesting. I think I'd like to do it." I said, "Well, great. We'll pay you X amount of money. You just have to write one page." And go. He goes, "No, no, no, no. Let me go write a script, and you see if you want to make it." And he brought me the script, and I was like, "This is fantastic. We'll do it." He said, "But Ted, you said you only could do it for $1 million." I said, "Yeah, that's all we have." He said, "I need two," and I can't give you two. He said, "It's okay. I have the two. I'm gonna make it, and you guys can sell it." It was E Tu Mama Tambien,
Oh, wow.
and what a fantastic, beautiful movie that also, I think, transformed his career. He went on to direct Harry Potter after that, blah, blah, blah. Launched Gael's career and
Mhm.
Diego's Luna's career. And I think that like that type of idea, often, it's like, let these chains set you free. Like you have limits, but you can, particularly if other folks are engaging and doing it at the same time. Like none of those folks were who they are today that I just mentioned. Um, you know, and an idea like that and the facility to do that, you can have people take bold things, they end up being in conversation with each other, the movies. And I think it's not like that was, about these auteurs making movies about sex. I'd like to see the movies about love right now. I
Mm.
think we need people to see that compassion, that empathy, and that connection where folks are you see that sparkle on the screen. Like, what was the last great romance you saw on screen? I like to think that movies are also kind of instructions for living. They help us understand how to pass through this world, and I think that, like, that's a real challenge in this world of distraction, how to actually connect deeply with other people. And so I think if we're able to make, I'm not too greedy, 15 films over 5 years, and had like this something, let's call it Mad Love today, that was like a label that represented it, just like what a Def Jam album is, or a Blue Note record, or a Sub Pop record. You know what a Mad Love movie was, and you say, "What are you gonna do?" Like this, like those movies are really romantic. It's how I met my life partner. Like people's lives would be changed. That would be awesome,
Oh
you
yeah.
know.
I'm all for that.
So if anyone out there that wants to like that, we have to have a little overhead too. So I think that's like 20 million bucks, and we'll no, we actually 315. I'm sorry, $50 million. That's all. That's a
I'm not a numbers girl, but I believe you. Prior to this meetup, I watched slash rewatched a few of your movies. Specifically Dark Horse. I wanted to ask you about the humor in that movie. One, how would you describe that type of humor? And how would you describe your personal humor, and if it lines up? Like if you're a dark humor, a dad joke, how is your style of humor?
Well, that movie, I was like, in some ways, is like cringe in a good, in a really good way. Like it's like really uncomfortable, um, and sad, right? Like, I like that kind of awkward thing. Todd Solondz is one of my favorite directors, and I feel super lucky to have gotten to make his movies that I did with him, even though some of my favorite ones of him I didn't get to make. But I think I contain multitudes. I think we all contain multitudes, and I wouldn't pigeonhole. Like, I would love to make a super silly movie like the airplane movies. Did you ever see what was it called? I want a town called Panic,
Mm-mm.
and it was, yeah. So it's a
Odds
kids
are he's seen it.
it's a kids movie made with like little like army men and figurines, and and it's silly as all get out. And I just remember like watching it with my wife and son, and just loving how mad it was, in a great way. It'd be super fun to make a movie like that. I don't think the world knows how to make silly movies. We know how to make like the R-rated adult silly movie, like of you know Sausage Party or movies like that. But I don't think we really know how to make like an all ages silly movie that everyone loves and thinks it, like, how do you get there?
Mm-hmm.
I like witty repartee, like the Thin Man movies and things like that, where people just talk sharp and funny.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy that a lot. I think when we get used to a character who has this particular type of humor, it can be a lot of fun and hard, like the Cary Grant type character. Um, yeah, there's tons. Yeah, multitudes. Multitudes.
Then I wanted to ask you also, so the movie The Devil and Daniel Johnston that you were part of, I left that movie feeling really sympathetic towards him, and I had read some reviews of people almost thinking that a lot of the individuals in his life were taking advantage of his disability for their own success and monetizing his life scenario with his mental illness. Did you have any qualms or feelings about creating this project, almost again adding to the popularity of him as an artist who is deeply troubled?
Yeah, well, Daniel was on the rise as a one of America's top selling outsider artists for his drawings at that time, and the movie definitely made him into the number one of that place. The movie also definitely kind of lifted his notoriety, and to the very end, like he when he was playing out, he would show the movie beforehand, so people would come to the concert starts, he wouldn't play for 2 hours because he would screen the movie without, like, paying for it or anything like that, but totally entitled to it. I think we're on a greater compassion and understanding for neurodiversity these days. And at that point in time, I think it was really hard to see somebody who was a manic depressive schizophrenic and not feel other.
Mm.
And the soul of that film comes through and allowed people to see sometimes how fragile in existence life is. I've seen I've had too many people close to me go off the deep end and both recover and not recover, and you see the those things, and it's going to happen around all of us in all of our lives. Like Americans, probably people of the world, but I can only speak here, are out of their fucking minds. We're all crazy, um, and uh, I think that the process of making that movie really helped Daniel a lot, and his own um, sense of worth and being loved and recognized. But there are also some things that mental illness will never be able to cut through and get us to a different side. Sometimes breakdowns are breakthroughs, and sometimes they're not. The path to recovery is not going to be there. Um, I know it's one of the favorite films I've done. I think it is actually a very ethical movie. It has some of the challenges that any documentary does, in that we can't tell the full story.
Hmm.
There are things you have to leave out, not unfortunately, that by choice, that become revealed in the movie, or you don't reveal in the movie. Um, but I think it's interesting that film. When we made it, won Best Director at Sundance for documentaries, Jeff Royzig, and and he's a filmmaker that I have other projects with. That I look forward to working with and making more things. I think he's a unique artist, but it didn't exactly light the world on fire. But you cut to literally 20 years later, and it's always on the list of like the best rock docs ever made.
Yeah, it's on every
Yeah.
list. Yeah.
And when I was in Taiwan, and the assistant editor comes in and is like, "Ted, look at this." And she shows me a photo, and I was like, "What?" She'd gone to, like, it was being released theatrically in Taiwan 15 years after it came out, like,
How cool.
and there was a new poster, and it was like, wow. And it, literally last month, I got 2 emails from people who wanted, who are working on Daniel Johnston projects, you know, um, and dreaming of getting the fiction one made. That's always been the case. We'll see what happens, but um, I think it's a remarkable film that gave Daniel a second lease on life, like Harvey Pekar in American Splendor.
Yeah, I wanted to
Another,
talk to you about that
yeah,
too. That movie, I have such a soft spot for documentaries. It's another type of movie that I'm always going to gravitate towards. American Splendor was cool because it's very meta, and I actually had a specific question for you about that. Oh, the quote, "If I die, will that character keep going or will he just fade away?" I thought that was so prophetic, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that quote.
there's an answer to it now, right? Because Harvey did die, and I think he's still very much alive. Uh, the fact that there's a statue of him in Cleveland in front of the public library is wonderful, you know. And his wife, Joyce Brabner, is responsible for getting that all done. You know, Harvey, it was like that was always one of my dream projects. That I remember when I found his comic books, American Splendor, and was just so moved by them, particularly one where he was contemplating suicide and ended up just sitting on the beach, looking out at the beach and thinking how profound the waves turning in was and how he could just keep going. And I was just like, wow, like how do you capture like little short story? And it just felt so soulful. And I loved how, you know, he didn't draw the cartoons, he just wrote the stories, and he had different artists illustrate them, so you saw these different aspects, and I was like, "Wow, that'd be so cool to make a movie where you actually had different actors playing Harvey," which wasn't going to be Todd Solondz did that later, you know, with
Oh,
Palindromes,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
Madam Oh My Atom,
Yeah.
you know, race car,
Hmm.
because in Palindromes, he does that. And it making that movie was a lot like kind of that quote, you know, that it took, you know, it was just I had dreamed of making the movie, and I knew a comic book artist, Dean Haspiel, who you know, was essentially one of the office administrators on the Ice Storm, but he's since become a well-known, well-regarded graphic novelist, cartoonist, and he got hired to do a some work for Harvey, and he told them that I was always dreamed of making the movie. And his wife called me one day, and I optioned the material and couldn't figure it out. We went down and we tried to we filmed Harvey and Joyce and Danielle, the daughter, and it was then that I realized the movie's not Harvey, but it's the family, and the real guy has to be in the movie, and that was the kind of eureka piece for me, where like you don't need to have 8 actors, you just have the real Harvey and the real people who populate his stories, and then you have actors playing them. Because some of those characters, including Harvey, if you do them so well, people are like, oh no, that's too big. Like it's not real. And then it's like, okay, so we tone down the performance, and then you see Harvey and you say, oh my God, it's so much bigger than I imagined. And you know, finding Paul Giamatti and he wasn't hard to find. He was we had worked together already, and he was doing lots of work. But he wasn't who he became after that movie. But letting you know HBO, Colin Callender and Maud Nadler, who are the executives, let us cast them. We didn't know how to solve so many problems on that movie, and they gave us the courage to keep not courage, the permission to go explore without knowing. Um, and Harvey, through the midst of it, like he had just retired, he would come to set because we took all of his furniture and stuff and just hang out and then fall asleep on set. And like Harvey, like the real guy would be sleeping right there. When we left, he got really depressed.
Mm.
And evidently like threw himself downstairs and different things happened, and he had no faith in the movie. Like even when he first watched it, watched it first in my office, he was like, like good luck with that.
Which I would imagine his response would be, though.
You know, until Sundance, right? And at that screening, you could tell the audience just loved the movie, and we got wonderful standing ovation. Al Gore was there, different things like that, and you watch the weight of the world, 15 years, just fall off of Harvey's shoulder.
Mm.
Like he stood up stronger, his skin got tighter, he was handsome, he was like somehow he lost 15 pounds. Like I don't know what happened. Like he was transformed by that screening. And during the course of like we brought him to Cannes. He had never been to Europe at that point. He got book commissions galore. It gave him a new lease on life. And I think that is entirely possible, time and time again, that there are like I always felt afterwards, every town, there's a remarkable small town hero that all it takes is talented artists telling their story, and we will recognize the gift that they gave us that we never saw before, and they too will have monuments erected in their honor, for saving us. There might be a monument of throwing the keys out of the airplane like Daniel Johnston
Mm-hmm.
did, or they might just be like Harvey saying, "Well, I fade away." No, you won't fade away. You're here to stay.
This episode of Intermission is brought to you by Paul Schrader's
Rolling thunder.
Can't just let it slide, Major. They don't have any right to live.
There's a storm brewing in this man. They took his arm. They took his family and his soul. His anger is building, and it's going to explode. Now, from Paul Schrader, the author of Taxi Driver, comes a new and shattering film about a man poised on the brink of violence. Rolling Thunder, starring William Devane as Charles Rain. He has a purpose. He has a plan. It's only a matter of time.
I found them. Who? The man who killed my son? I'll just get my gear.
coming to a screen near you in the year 1977. I just watched In the Bedroom for the first time just this week, and it broke my heart. I try my best. It depends. I try to not read about movies prior. Like this one, I actually had zero context of plot, so I was thoroughly surprised. And yeah, I didn't know where it was going at all, so I was very sad. But I just wanted to hear about your experience with that movie and making it, and kind of what your takeaway was, without maybe giving too much of the plot away, because I want other people to experience what I experienced.
It's interesting. Like it once was, back when Netflix was a DVD delivery service, it reigned for like 3 years as a top American independent film on their service. Like people totally dug it. And I think it's because it is both a thriller and very much a true life type story drama with deep characters. There were converging paths that made it also like an important work for everybody who was on it. It started for me when I was doing Nicole Holofcener's first movie, Walking and Talking.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine Keener and Anne Heche and Liev Schreiber and Todd Field, right? So people remember the women, they remember Liev, but they kind of forget that Todd Field, the director, was once an actor. And the reason he's in that movie is my assistant at the time fell in love with him in Ruby in Paradise, Victor Nunez's beautiful film that won Sundance, and he was in it. And Kelly Miller, my assistant, was just like, Ted, Nicole, you got to bring Todd Field in. And I was like, we can't find him anywhere. She found him. She got him on the phone. She got him into an audition. He got the role. And oftentimes, like, as a producer, you have these conversations where you're standing next to the actor, and the actor says, yeah, but what I really want to do is direct. And the producer says, yeah, I've got a call, right? But Todd, somehow what he said, like, it totally registered, rang a bell. I tracked it. And he said, I really want to adapt this writer, Andre Dubus. Andre Dubus happened to be like my dad's drinking buddy. They both taught at the same school. I grew up with his kids. I have many fond memories. And Andre had a tragic accident. Like one night coming home, and he was like a successful writer, short stories, novels. One time coming home from Boston, he saw a car stopped on the left-hand lane of the highway, and like it had somehow like run over or knocked over a motorcycle. and the car couldn't move. The person was hurt, and got out of his car and he was talking to the driver, trying to figure out. And another car came, slammed in, and ruined his legs for the rest of his life. He couldn't walk. He was wheelchair bound ever since. Kept writing, stayed in the same area, and Todd wanted to adapt a story of his, and that short story for In the Bedroom, it's called Killings, I believe.
Okay.
Not to give anything away, starts actually like the view. It's in a cemetery, but the view that he describes is the view from the house I grew up in, and it's also like this wonderfully. This part's on the movie. I'm pretty sure it's the same story. It's a divorced dad in a car having just dropped off the kids, and they stayed in the car talking, and he realizes the car is fogged up from their breath. So when he's wiping it away, he's wiping away the breath of the kids that he loves and he can't quite see, which is also like nice. But it also speaks of we lived up on a big hill along a river, and it speaks of the apple orchard across the way, and that, was our view. So that was the story. So I felt a real connection to it, and it was Andre. And when Andre was the last person other than my mom to see my dad before my dad died, and when I went to see Andre about the story, he said, your dad and the last words to your dad said to me was, we never did write that screenplay. Like they had wanted to make a movie together and they never made it. And so, basically we all got excited to make that film. Todd, like you see it now, like when we talk about total cinema, about Kubrickian, being able to work on all different levels, we see that in his work, most notably with Tar.
Incredible.
Yeah. And but he had yet to direct anything. There was some other stuff that he had done there. I can't even remember the name of this movie. He did a movie about, as an actor, about an EMT guy, like on drugs. That is a lot like that Nicolas Cage Scorsese Bringing Out the Dead, except this was done beforehand for a tenth the budget, and frankly, it's better. Like it's awesome. It's an awesome movie. I remember seeing it, and it was like, Todd was super smart, super considered, and when he delivered the script, and he also delivered a lookbook. And the way that script was, it was his draft of the script. The way the script was written and the way it corresponded with the lookbook, I had no doubt that he was a director. Like he was able to communicate his vision. But it's really hard to get a first-time film made. We had great partners who trusted in this. But then crazy things too, like we couldn't cast the Tom Wilkinson role. Tom got cast 3 days before shooting began. 3 days before shooting began. He came in. He said he was okay without rehearsal. He just needed to walk around the town for a day. He's British. He learned the main accent. He walked around town, and he got nominated for an Oscar, like his first nomination. That film, which was made for about $3 million, got 5 Oscar nominations. Including a Best Picture. Didn't win, but not bad for your first feature. It was the first film by a first-time director to get the National Board of Review Best Director since like Stanley Kubrick had gotten it, or something. Like it was like so long back. Like it was nice. But we never had enough money. It was really hard and brutal. And Todd knew what he wanted. The hardest thing in independent film is when your director knows what they want. Because when they know what they want and they're right, it's so hard to actually get it and deliver it. Money's tight, time is tight, tensions are high. And Todd, had worked with Stanley Kubrick on Eyes Wide Shut and wanted everyone focused and committed the way it was on that set. But he wasn't yet Stanley Kubrick, and we weren't paying people well, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. I don't think it was yet cell phone time, but everyone carried newspapers and books and all that, and Todd didn't want people doing that. He wanted all of us working towards what was happening on the set, which made it all really hard. It was right, but it was really hard. But I think you see through in that, I didn't even say the hardest part of that story, too. But you see in that everything is chosen. There aren't accidents in that movie. Sometimes movies are blessed by happy accidents, but that movie is selected, right? And designed and chosen. Everything is working in service. We brought that film to Sundance. It wasn't your typical Sundance movie because it wasn't young people. It was older people, Sissy Spacek and Tom Wilkinson in the kind of core roles. And we were in debt. If we didn't sell the movie, we were fucked. And we sold the movie to Harvey Weinstein. And Harvey in those days was known for something else than what he's known now. He was known as Harvey Scissorhands for cutting up people's movie. But in the contract, I had final cut. And Todd and I had some changes we wanted to make. So because in some ways we didn't really get to watch it until Sundance. So we were able to say, yes, we would recut the movie and we would make it shorter because we knew we wanted to take like a minute or two out. And I had final cut. And that's basically when hell began on that movie, because we sold that movie in January. By August, what started on that film was Todd, it's like, okay, you got to recut the movie. So and then we'll test it. We recut the movie. We tested it. I can't remember the exact score, but it was nowhere near what Harvey wanted. But it was, for me, like one of my best testing movies. So I was like super happy. And Harvey was like, no, I know what you did. Like you deliberately, didn't give me what I wanted. I'm going to recut the movie. Todd is one of the most disciplined filmmakers, period. And in getting to the cut of the movie, he considered every possible option. I've gone through it with him. We were desperate to make the movie short. I think it was like 2 hours, 22 minutes long. We couldn't. And like I remember saying on that, like, sometimes shorter is just shorter. It's not better. And we tried everything. Harvey recut it. He took like 30 minutes out of the movie, tested it, and our movie tested better. And then he got even more angry, right? So everything stopped. And we were lucky that we had people at the company of Miramax at the time who were totally on our side, who knew what our movie was, believed in our movie, and championed it. But they had to deal with this boss that was challenging. And so one of them, I think it was Mark Gill, who ran companies on his own later, called us and at a certain point said, look, here's the deal. Harvey's going to be at the Mercer Street Hotel. He's going to be having dinner there with Marty Scorsese and Thelma Shoemaker and all of that. Todd, you have to show up and confront him there. That's the only way that you'll get an answer from him. And it was like August 30th. The movie's supposed to come out in the beginning of November. Like, we're not yet, like, we're out of time. Todd lived in LA. This was happening in New York. Todd wisely, but like, did not take another job because he was an actor. He was turning down work, going broke, having to remortgage his house because if he took his eyes off the ball, he'd lose it, right? So he stayed focused, stayed on it, did what was asked, got on the plane, flew it. Oh, Harvey, and he's an actor, so like, and, you know, and he was like, Harvey was like, oh, sit down. Do you know Marty and Thelma and that sort of stuff? No, hello. And then Todd was like, Harvey, are you going to let me finish my movie? Like, got it? Like, it's like, oh, Todd's made. I'm not going to do an impression because I can't do him. Todd's made a great movie, but it's too long. Look, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to let Marty see it. And whatever Marty says, like, that's what we're going to do. Except if he decides for you, then we're going to still do what I want. You have to agree. And so Todd said, fine, let Marty see. Because, like, you figure, what do I've got to lose? I was kind of thrilled because I was then supposed to call Thelma, and she was a hero of mine. So I called Thelma and like, yes, we've seen the movie. We love the movie. There's some changes we think can fit. Like, I'm going to talk to Marty. I'm going to get back to you. Nothing happens. I call again. It's like, yeah, we can't talk. Like, what is going on? Why is this happening? Just goes totally silent again. Then one day we get a phone call, and it's Harvey. I get a phone call, and it's like, you got to get everyone over to my office tomorrow, and we're going to watch the film, and we're going to lock the picture. Like, so we all go in. Todd has to fly back again. And you would go in, and this is like, things aren't digital yet, right? He has these office set with 2 stacks of decks, videotape decks, and he's going through the film cut, like, this is my cut, this is your cut, back to back. And the like, very early on, like, he has this horrible blunt cut, and I say, Harvey, that's a horrible blunt cut. And he's like, shut the fuck up, Hope. You were going to produce my movie, except I'm going to now have Anthony when he directs, right? I'm going to direct a movie. I was going to have you produce it. I'm going to have Anthony Minghella produce it now, because at least that way it'll be under 3 hours long, right? Don't open your trap. I was like, ah. But I knew that Harvey had already directed a movie. And curious enough, like, he directed a movie, I forget what it was called, but even though he was supposed to be a great distributor, he directed a very Jewish-themed movie that he released on Rosh Hashanah. Hello? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be genius. Like, no one's going to show up. No one showed up. Like, but he did. He wanted to do his first movie. But this whole thing with the cuts go back and forth, back and forth. I get to speak. Harvey starts to get bored. We're winning the argument. And at a certain point, he goes, just like, fuck it. You can have your movie. Just make sure 2.5 minutes are cut out of it. That's what we wanted to do. Done. So we win our movie, right? And that was like the key and all that sort of stuff. It's like, this is the culture. This is the environment. Whatever you got to do, we're going to have to be, because in the end, what you need to come out of that is you have to want him to promote your movie.
Mm-hmm.
So our little movie that we made opens. The real circumstances were twofold. One, Harvey was going after, I think, his 11th Best Picture nomination in the row. He had wanted Gangs of New York. It wasn't finished. He had Ice Harvest with Kevin Spacey. It wasn't a good movie. He had Emily, which was a great movie, but was in French. It wasn't going to be a Best Picture. And he had our movie. When as the award season goes on, like, I remember watching the SAG Awards, and there were 3 commercials in a row for Ice for In the Bedroom, because Harvey bought them all thinking he had all these movies, and in the end he had one horse in the race, and it was us. So this little movie that he bought for like $1 million or $2 million that cost $3 million to make, he spent $20 million marketing and pushing that movie. It made 32 at the box office, so like, it was a win for everybody, but he was so locked in. But the other thing that made that film successful was something I'd wish on nobody, and it was such a interesting thing to observe, was Todd and I had bonded over really wanting to make a movie that captured what grief was, that wanting a feeling at the end, how the weight of grief led people to do things that were outside of beyond their comfort zone. we knew that it was actually a movie that captured and showed the price you pay for violence. However, something else had happened before that movie came out, and that was September 11th that year. That movie came out in November. And what people saw was not a movie that dealt with the results of violence. What they saw was a tale of revenge. And when we tested the movie in the final stage, that's what people said. I was so glad that he went out and got that motherfucker. That wasn't the movie we made. They saw the movie they wanted to see. In time, now that you've seen it now, like, you don't have that context anymore. And you get to see the movie we made. But the $32 million of box office we got, they all saw a different movie because of their mindset at the time.
It's fascinating.
You know? So yeah, you have the movie you make, and you have the movie that they want to see, and you might think they're the same thing, but they aren't always.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. That was a fascinating story. This has been incredible. I loved getting to talk to you. Do you have, just to wrap this up, anything you'd like to plug, whether that's a project, a movie, director, whatever?
This is a great day for me because I have 2 things opening today.
Amazing.
Today, we talked a little bit about Roger Ross Williams' Cassandro, and that opens in theaters. I think it's on like 75 different screens across the country. And next week, it'll be on the Amazon streaming platform. But it's a beautiful film. It played Sundance. It played Telluride. It has a huge Rotten Tomato score. It's fresh. And Gael Garcia Bernal is wonderful in that role. Really remarkable performance that people should see. And then tonight, which will be 4 days ago, whenever this airs, so go back in your time machine and turn on your television and put it on public television and watch American Masters and watch Jerry Brown, The Disruptor, a documentary by Marina Zenovich on the 4-term former governor of California, many-time presidential candidate, boyfriend of Linda Ronstadt at one point, and really an incredible example of a selfless politician who can work across the aisle and get things done. You know, to work with, quote, his enemies and find common ground. It's not an accident that between his second and third terms, he studied Zen Buddhism. He's a super unique character. And when Marina asked for my help, I was like, yeah, maybe this movie would inspire people. This man would inspire people to lead a life of selfless giving to a better world, which is what this man did. So I'm really pleased to be part of it. And when we went to see it, and my wife got to see the movie, also for what it's worth, she was like, Jerry Brown was hot. So there's that.
That's the big takeaway.
And then today in real life, not podcast land, it's September 15th. And on September 29th and 30th, and then basically for the next 2 weeks across the country, we're going to film festivals screening Invisible Nation, my wife Vanessa's second documentary feature film as a director. She also was a producer with me, along with many other folks. And that tells the story of Taiwan's peaceful transition into the most vibrant democracy in Asia after the longest period of martial law in the history of the world, and how they endure now under this very careful dance between the authoritarian regime of China, who would like to invade them, and the U.S., who claims protecting them while doing a tremendous amount of business with China to undermine that protection at the same time. Its focus is the female president, 2-term, incredibly popular President Tsai in Taiwan. and you see a kind of remarkable method of leadership based on, but in some ways I would say like compassion and understanding as opposed to aggression. She stands firm, to the authoritarian power that threatens an invasion, but at the same time has first country to have a same-sex marriage law in Asia, doing lots of transitional justice, owning up to the mistakes and violence in the past, really making it a pluralistic democracy, unlike many others, and one that frankly we wish could be that way in America right now. So super pleased to bring that film out and to bring it out to the world. It's been a long labor of love, and in some ways I think it might be the most important movie I've ever made.
Incredible. I'm so excited to see it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again.
All right.
And we're done.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us 5 stars in Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to follow our Instagram @It's Intermission Time and share with your friends. As always, Intermission is produced by Jazeel Chu and Olivia Deaton, directed by Kaden Laroki, and of course, hosted by yours truly, Megan Braun. Be sure to say your prayers and visit the synagogue on all platforms.